we're going to try to start pretty soon. We still have about 30, 40 people waiting to come. So by the time I finish my presentation, we will probably hold, because tonight it is a full house. And like last time, I've seen the film before because it was last year, around November, I think, thanks to the Australian consulate. We showed this film, M on the Bun, in the Jockey Club Hall. And we had a full house of over 300 people. And we were getting calls every day a week before. And so I was not surprised that tonight was going to be a sellout. And we were getting calls yesterday and today. So I'm so glad you're here. And please, and thank you all for being part of this encore screening of M on the Bun. A wonderful documentary. I think you'll enjoy it. And I want to start off by really thanking this film is part of the International Women's Day or International Women's Month. This is the month of March. So the film came about because there was enough interest. Many of you, I was getting calls about the encore screening. And also, we were able to talk to the filmmaker and bring it to show here, again, at Asia Society, Hong Kong. And so it's part of the International Women's Celebration Day Month celebration, and I'm really grateful. The IWF, International Women's Forum, has agreed to help co-sponsor, and then again, thanks to Jessica, the magazine, for financially helping to sponsor this film. And you'll hear from Jessica Ng, founder of Jessica. Later on, we'll introduce our speakers. And IWF is probably the biggest kept secret in Hong Kong. So can I see a show of hand of IWF members here tonight? Pretty good showing. Those of you who want to know more about IWF, later on talk to Vivian, our president of IWF Hong Kong. And Vivian can tell you all about IWF, and you can also find out more about IWF on the website. It's an international women's organization that was founded over 50 years ago in New York. And IWF and Asia Society actually has a lot in common. Asia Society, our headquarters is in New York, founded in 1956. This year, IWF Hong Kong is celebrating 35th anniversary. Asia Society Hong Kong is also celebrating 35th anniversary. So we have a lot of parallel milestones. So that's why to be part of IWF family, I'm truly honored. And so I'm really grateful for the IWF support. And by the way, Michelle was probably one of the earliest member of Michelle Garnaut, our subject of the film tonight, was one of the earliest founder or one of the earliest member of IWF when it was founded in 1990. So that's why it's very appropriate that we show this film here in Hong Kong at this point in time. And I'm really glad. I think after the screening, you'll hear from Vivian, who will be be moderating, and then you'll hear directly from two really, really outstanding women leader. I have been so proud to call them IWF sisters. And I think you also saw in the some of the slides, on Friday, we are going to have a program with Wellesley Club of Hong Kong. And the president of Wellesley, Dr. Paula Johnson, is going to be the keynote speaker, along with 4 prominent Wellesley alums from all over the world. And I just found out, I think I sent it to you, Dr. Johnson is an IWF member, IWF Massachusetts. So tickets are almost gone. I think we're going to expect another full house on Friday for that lunch. But if you are interested, please talk to us, and we will love to have you join us on Friday. So now I have celebrated, and we're also going to do a group photo. Those of you who can be staying around after the talk, we'll kind of move the speakers back and then do a group photo, if you don't mind, to document this special occasion. I already mentioned Encore. Let's see. Oh, another interesting tidbit. When you were seeing all that slide, you probably saw one about the Six. That documentary is going to be shown here on April 24th. And the Six, in fact, those of you who were at the Lit Fest, the Hong Kong International Literary Festival, which, again, Michelle has been very much intimately involved in. And in the film, you'll find out about the other Lit Fest that she has founded in Shanghai. Stephen Shanker, the author of that book, spoke at the Lit Fest, but unfortunately his book was not out yet. The book will come out in April, and we will show the documentary here. Many of you have not seen that documentary. I've seen it the first time last year. And the documentary is made by the same filmmaker. LT, I think, the young woman who made this movie, also made the 6th. And it's because of last year's showing of M on the Bun, I got to meet her. And I cornered her. I said, can we show the 6th? So that just shows you how things happen here at Asia Society. One thing leads to another. And I see Bonnie there, very much involved. Congratulations on the LitFest success. And it's really, and Mark, thank you, Mark O'Neill, who has done many programs for us on, he's a prolific writer. And this is the beauty of Asia Society Hong Kong. I see Henry and Margaret. Henry has done a program for us, Henry Steiner, the legendary. So Hong Kong really has talent. And Asia Society Hong Kong, we mean to be the platform for this kind of showcasing the Hong Kong talent. So I think that's all I have to say. I think we have a lot of people who already showed up. Okay, I have one housekeeping item, and I apologize for making this announcement, but because one of our members drafted a statement for me to make, and I'm going to read the draft that I don't know if he's here yet. Is he? Okay. Thank you for drafting the statement for me, and I'm going to read it, but then I'm going to refine my ask, okay? We remind all attendees that the use of cellular devices during this talk or during this filming, the screening, is disruptive and is prohibited or not allowed. If any members or guests does so, he or she will be asked to leave the venue. Again, I'm just reading this. I'm not enforcing this. Furthermore, using your device to send or read a text message, even if your device is set to silent, is extremely distracting to those seated next to you or near to you due to the light going on and off intermittently. If you must use your device for an emergency situation, please leave your seat and do so outside. Thank you for your cooperation. So I read it, and I'm going to refine it because I'm president of Asia Society Hong Kong, and I have to enforce it. When I read that statement, or when I saw the email, I was really, really apologetic because I do it all the time. I can't help myself. So I know, let's try an experiment today. Film is 90 minutes, so if we can do a digital detox for 90 minutes, I'm sure we will all appreciate it. Those of you, and if you can't, and I know some of us really are in high-powered jobs, you need to check your email or check whatever, then we ask you to do it, maybe move behind so that you're not, the front part of it will be all dark. And so I made the announcement, and I'm refining it because it really is disruptive when people are watching the movie. And I find myself now, if I go into a movie theater, I'm digitally detoxing. So I ask you to do that if you can. And if not, please consider your fellow attendees. Obviously, it disrupted some people, and it was not the first time. I've gotten other requests like that. So I thank you for your reminding me. And all the 13 years I've been here, we rarely have a phone. I never had to make any announcement about the phone going off because our members and those of you here are really, really good about that. But this is a new development, and I ask you for your understanding. So enjoy the film, and we're gonna, 90 minutes later, we will have the post-screening talk. So thank you so much for coming.
Encore screening of M on the Bund. I'm Jessica, founder of the Jessica Company. For 25 years, our media platform has celebrated women's success stories and women's contributions to society, and I am so amazed by this film. I'd like to share a little bit about myself. M on the Bund is actually a really special place for me and my husband. When he was working in Shanghai, I would frequent Shanghai, visit him, and every weekend we would be there for brunch on Sundays, boozy brunch. And we took our wedding photos there on the balcony with the flag in the background. So yes, M on the Bund is a special place in my heart. I have a very long introduction to read about Michelle, but I don't think we need to do that because yeah, that's been done by the film. I would, however, like to introduce Ms. Vivian Lau, President of the International Women's Forum, my sister in good, as Alice just said. I am also a member of the board of International Women's Forum Hong Kong. Vivian is also chair and group CEO of Pacific Air Holdings Limited. She's dedicated her life to society, youth, women. I love her. She's great. I don't really have much to say. Enjoy the Q&A session with Michelle and Vivian. Thank you very much. Whoa, I don't know about you.
Thank you, Jessica.
So Michelle has a very special place in many people's stomachs, and obviously also has a very special place in many people's hearts and soul, me included. So for me, tonight is a huge honor to be here having a conversation with you. And I was actually, trying to get myself prepared, for this moderation. So, being very decisively impromptu. So I reached out to Michelle on the weekend and said, can we talk about what we're going to talk about? So that preparation was actually like in 3 minutes. So, because we believe that it is going to be a lot more authentic and a lot more sincere that we're just going to have a conversation. However, before we get started, I think there's something very important that we want to level set, our dialogue. This is a documentary, correct? Correct. But I believe there are some important messages that we want to get started first. Whilst it's a documentary, you're not involved in the documentary. You didn't finance the documentary, right? So because that is all, whilst this is about Michelle, is about, 25 years of Shanghai, love letters and all that is a documentary, but not involving any financing or any sort of editorial sort of conversation from Michelle, because I think it's very important that we start off with that. However, to get the documentary going, they will need your consent.
Yeah, so actually that's true, and many people sort of say to me, "Oh, you made this documentary, so why can't you send it to us?" It's like, well, I don't own it, I didn't make it, and the rules of documentary making are that whichever subject there might be in the documentary, they can't be involved in either the financial or the sort of artistic control. So I had no artistic control, but actually how it happened was that I called LT, who I know, and said I'd really like to have 5 minutes of film before we close. So that was when we announced closing. So all of that stuff in the restaurant is either in the last 2 months before we closed, or it's old footage that we owned, because you can't really use footage that you don't own. There's one bit where you'll see I had a yellow coat on. I had that same coat in 2004, the same one at the end, which I think is very good value. But that footage was from an Australian broadcasting, an ABC documentary, and we had to pay, or they had to pay, 88 Australian dollars per second to use that tiny bit of me walking across a bridge and into the building. Crazy. Yeah, we tried to get, people to subsidize it, but that, they wouldn't. And then the rest of it's stock footage. And that's sort of how it came about. And LT said that. She said, you won't be able to be involved. And I said, that's fine. That's fine. It's not, it's a story about the restaurant, but it's not really a story about me. I don't think. I think it's a story about Shanghai. And I think that's what was interesting for them. And for her, she's Shanghainese. I think that's what was interesting for her, that actually we captured a sort of period of Shanghai. And so it's sort of like Shanghai through the lens of a restaurant.
Yeah, but the thing is though that it started out as like 5 minutes of like a little bit sort of like movie. This became 87.
No,
Yeah,
I asked them to do 5 minutes that I would
yeah.
pay, that I would pay them and I would own it. And I kept saying to her, you need to give me a budget. We have not got a lot of money. You need to give me a budget. I'm closing a restaurant. And then she came back to me after a couple of days and she said, we're just going to start shooting. We're thinking about doing a documentary length, feature length documentary. And would you be happy with that? And I said, if that's what you want to do, sure. He said, but you know that you're not going to be involved. I said, yes, I understand. So, yeah, that's fine.
So 87 minutes for like 23 or 25 years of your life. Whilst it's not just about you, but you are indeed the main character of this documentary.
The restaurant's the
Yeah.
main character.
And so, which means that every 1 minute that we watch is almost like 3 months of of your life. Now, and I know that you've watched it a few times, right?
I have.
Yes. So how many times have you watched it?
This is probably about 5 or 6 now.
Okay. Well, this is my second time watching it, and honestly, there is so much that I think in that documentary that if we were to unpack it, we probably would be here for 3 days. Now, so you've watched it 6 times. So, what would be your impression of what you're watching this time versus like what are the things that stood out at you?
I'm sort of used to it. I mean, it's sort of, yeah. I still tear up at, especially, there's a couple of things that really make me feel really sad. And one is the guy from Simply Quartet, who when I first met him, he was 14. And, and he didn't speak any English at all. So, we didn't really communicate all that much with a 14-year-old. They won that first competition. We did a chamber music competition and festival. And the first one was in 2009. And they're now really, professional. And I'm giving them a plug because they are Andrea Fessler's main quartet next January, which will be the premier performances chamber music festival, and they are the main quartet coming. So there are still things that I laugh at. Telling Sam to get a stock sheet done, it's never done. You wouldn't be surprised. Between Sam and Alex, it was a miracle anything got done. But I ended up. Sorry, I've got a sore throat. I ended up doing the stock sheet myself, of course, with Carrie. The girls, actually ended up doing all the work. And I always feel terrible when I see that poor guy that I pick up the menu up and put it in front of his face. Every time I see that, I think, oh, God, I wish I'd cut that scene. It's just, yeah. I sort of think, I'm totally oblivious, of course. I don't know. I mean, I've heard so much of it, and I know the lines now. Me telling Chris to have another drink, have some alcohol, Chris. Of course, that's the last thing I should be encouraging. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a story about Shanghai. And it's partly me at my best and me at my worst, and and I think that's how it is. I watched the what's her name? Martha Stewart thing. And I always was really disdainful about Martha Stewart. I remember when I first came to Hong Kong, the first catering party I ever did, the person who I did it for, who I still know, asked me to do stuffed snow peas. And I said, I'll do like 20 different things for you, but you can stuff your own snow peas. I'm not doing that. And she had that Martha Stewart entertaining book, and she had all these ridiculous things. I was like, oh, God, help me. Anyway, I watched that Martha Stewart biop, and of course she's so, she's tough, and I think, God, I fully understand. And I think actually even I feel, I think this is also from a female perspective, we're so tough on women. It's sort of like, was I so tough on Martha Stewart? I think she's bloody fantastic. And you have to be. She says the same thing. Sometimes you have to be tough. You can't just, sweet, you get walked all over. So, you know, you have to be tough. And the toughest person was, as you saw, Susan Zhang. I never knew she was called Susan. She was always Madam Zhang to me. And right at the beginning, I signed, she was the deputy director of this company that we dealt with right at the beginning in May 98. And there was no commercial things allowed on the Bund, actually. So there was no commercial enterprise on the Bund at that point. It was earmarked for diplomat for consulates and for commercial government and commercial officers. And at that point, the bank, the old Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, had closed down. It was the government office, the Shanghai government offices, and it had already closed down. I think even maybe in '96 when we were at the peace, it was still there. But I went to look at that building, and that was one of the first ones to be developed. And they were they subcontracted the building, and the reason that we were able to do a restaurant was because they said that there had been a canteen in this shipping building, and therefore there had been a food license there, and therefore we should be allowed to do it. And of course, you know, the government people wanted development, but they had to themselves work around the rules. And there was a lot of cooperation from working around those rules. But that same woman who at the end is talking about the parking is the same one that I dealt with at the beginning. And she was formidable. She was terrifying. And the funny thing was that one day we were talking, and she was really sort of strict and severe, and something, maybe my birthday was there or something like that, and she said, "Well, you know, you're a golden rooster." And I said, "Yes, I am a golden rooster. I was actually born on the first day of Chinese New Year in 1957. I was a first day. And she was the second or the third day. And she was born in Shanghai, I was born in Melbourne, same year. And she said, 'We're sisters.' I know it." And I was like, "Okay, great, we're sisters, fantastic." And then everything changed. And, you know, she was a great supporter, and she was there through a lot. And I'll finish that story. The funny part was that we did open in 99. So I signed the lease in 98. We did open in January 99. I thought that took forever. And actually am I allowed to mention Hugh Zimmern, who actually designed M at the Fringe? He never really gets any credit for anything. And I remember sort of screaming and yelling at Hugh, why were things taking so long in 1989? And, you know, sort of, that was quick, and then, you know, that was really quick. I think Beijing took maybe 3 years or 4 years, it took forever. Anyway, thank you, Hugh, formally. I was going to say, I've lost my story. Oh no, I know it. So we signed the lease with this company, and I was in Europe. I went off to Europe maybe it was it was probably in the summer, and I got a call from somebody saying, "I think you better come back. The head of Jindu, which was the company, has been arrested for corruption." I was like, "Uh-huh." And it's like, yes, he's up on a fraud case I never really worked out the quantity. I think it was 601, which is 600 times 10,000. Or it was 60 million, don't think it was 6 million. I think it was a lot more than that. Anyway, she was the deputy. Luckily for me, I never met him. She helped me through all of that. She helped me through the courts, and then we eventually signed another lease a couple of months later with the Shanghai Shipping Company. So that was a good side of the lease of the courts of China, because we were completely protected. And the Mitsubishi, I think the elevator was whatever elevator company was, they came and they said to me, "If you don't pay for the whole elevator," which was 1 million RMB or something, "we're going to cut it off." And we were on the 7th floor, and there was nothing else, you know, there was only something on the ground floor. I was like, "But we have to have the elevator." And actually the courts protected us, but she was a good supporter.
Well, I think that if this conversation is actually recorded, we can continue to add on to, the M on the Bun documentary. Because I think, we are privileged to be let in on some very special stories as well. But
There's a
you've
million of them.
Yes. So you've watched it 6 times, right?
yeah.
And I do want to come back to this. It's like, you see yourself on full display, that, 23 or 25 years. And any moments when you are watching the documentary that you tell yourself, oh, maybe I could have done certain things differently?
Well, like had a
Or-
facelift or something.
or like certain things that you say that wow, this is really powerful, like I really want to see how I can savor, or how to make more out of it.
No, I think when you're, I mean, first of all, I was not concerned about making a documentary. I was concerned about closing a restaurant. And it was made over time, of course, because the scenes where I'm walking along, looking at the building that I'd lived in, that's long after. That was probably, I think that was maybe filmed in October or something, later in the year after I'd already left. So we closed in February. We closed on Valentine's Day. Anybody who's ever worked in a restaurant, your least favorite day of the year is Valentine's Day. I hate Valentine's Day. But anyway, lots of other people didn't. So we didn't only do the odd numbers, which we'd tried to do before. But anyway, that was our closing night. And actually a friend organised, she was in big advertising, she organised the sign on the city building. And I didn't know about it. Everybody else knew about it, but I didn't. They'd all managed to keep it a secret from me. So it's sort of genuine surprise, that one. But yeah, I was concerned about that. So, they were there, and they were there, whenever they wanted to be there. I just said you had free access, and then I gave them free access to anything they wanted to have. Funny, today I've been at the office in Hong Kong, which we're closing down, and there are files and files and just files of press clippings, and I'm like, oh my God. Anyway, they didn't have all of that. They only had what was in the office in Shanghai. And so we closed in February 22. We had, I think, like 6 days to get out. And we sent everything to storerooms, and they moved, the wreckers moved in on, I can't remember, maybe the end of, I think maybe we had a week, and then the wreckers moved in, and then by the middle of March, the Bund had pretty much closed down with COVID. Pretty much altogether, you couldn't even get into the building, and by about the 25th, I think the last truck came on the 28th of March or something like that, and we sent the last things to the storeroom, which was in Kunshan, which is a couple of hours away. And then Shanghai went into lockdown for 5 days on the 1st of April, and as many of you will know, it didn't really open up again until, May, really. I was lucky to get out at the end of April. I got on a plane at the end of April in a hazmat suit, and I was the only person on the whole plane in a hazmat suit.
Right.
I was the only non-Chinese person. I'm the only one in a hazmat suit.
So like this is the second time I'm watching it, as I say, and you really have been my role model for many years in my life, and I've
known
always
Vivian since she was a teenager.
And I've always, look at Michelle and say, Michelle is always ahead of her time. It's like you were investing in Shanghai. You could see the treasure of Shanghai. But you also decided to actually run the business in a very unique way. In a very unique way that you also said, like, who would run a restaurant and then spend all this money doing all this literary, thinking back, would you recommend, I know there are some aspiring operators here, actually thinking about doing something very similar in Hong Kong, a restaurant-based business, but really wanting to open up the heart to
You're
the
a billionaire,
community
no
and
problem.
literature? So what are the advice, apart from being a
If
billionaire?
you're a billionaire, no problem.
All right. Okay. So I think, for those aspiring ones, you've got the answer. But then the other thing that I want to talk about is like, I know that, maybe this might not be a topic that we want to touch on because it's like, okay, but this is International Women's Day month, right? And I think you've also said it in the movie that sometimes it's quite difficult because, women are somehow expected to always look pretty regardless. And then, but having walked this journey, having been through so many big changes in life, what advice would you like to give, or what sharings would you like to, say to messages to us, the young at heart and the really young and the aspiring young?
What messages about what? We all get older.
Yes, but what advices? Because we still, we still struggling. We still have, we still live in a world that, yes, we've made a lot of progress. We've said this before, but progress is not parity. That we still have quite a number of challenges as women face.
I think actually the most important thing to look at is that whatever your own sort of, standards or morals are, that you live by them. And I remember one year thinking, sort of sprouting all of this stuff about equality and sort of looking at the payroll one time. And I think at that point we had about 300 people on the payroll. It was probably the time I had most people. And, which honestly, it was a nightmare. But I think I didn't really have the right structure for it also. But looking and thinking, actually, when I look at the women, what women are paid in our company, they're not paid the same. And so I did a change, and I said, well, all the women are going to get the same as the men. Doesn't matter what job they're doing, they're going to get the same as the men. And so, here's the pay general increase. I mean, we all know how it worked in times of things thriving. Everybody wanted a 10% pay rise or 8% or whatever it was. And in China, there were always guidelines that you had to follow for the percentage of pay rise. So that made life relatively simple. And I, sort of evened it out and increased. So, of course, the women had a higher percentage. And all the guys said, that's not fair. And I said, oh, well, tough luck. So I think that, when I looked at it, it was like, well, I'm doing it too. And I'd never really, it's not that I hadn't thought about it. It was that it's right there in front of you. So I think there's a lot of things that are sort of staring us in the face that we don't look at. But I think for women who, I think it's a different world. It's very much a world around social media. And I don't envy anybody going into sort of business where you've got to deal with social media. But I think you just have to do what you believe in. And for me, doing what I wanted to do in a restaurant, I remember when we started in Hong Kong, I wanted to split the tips between everybody. And I'd worked as a waitress, as a dishwasher, as a cleaner, as a cook. I'd done all of it. And I just said, everybody participates, including all the people in the office. I mean, every single person in a restaurant contributes to the experience that a customer has. And if the toilets are not clean, actually, that really is just the end for me. It's like, I don't go back to a restaurant if its toilets are not clean. If it can't clean its toilets, what's the kitchen? What does its kitchen look like? So that I got real fight back, real kickback from that. And we had a couple of English waiters and they just wouldn't participate in it. And, it's like, well, sorry, you've got to live, tough luck. So I think you've got to do what you believe in, and that's...
Yeah, and it's a powerful reminder that we always say that integrity is doing the right thing when nobody is watching. And I can see from this vintage point that we also have, a lot of men and women here, and especially for women who are in, decision-making positions, it's up to us to make sure that, we really serve everybody right. Now, I really would like to dominate the time, but at the same time, I do know that there are a lot of audience here would like to really ask questions directly from our very own Michelle Garnaut, truly larger than life and a legend. So let's open the floor.
You can't be a legend, as my mother says. You can't be a legend in your lifetime.
So, anyone? Yes. Can you hold for the mic?
Michelle, that was an amazing movie. I was very inspired by
I think
you.
we
and
all
the
have to give
beauty of
Luo
that
Tong a round of
restaurant.
applause. She made it.
Okay, but I know you, not her. Anyhow, what's your next plan? Are you gonna? Will we see more of you in Hong Kong?
I don't know.
So we don't know if you'll be in Hong Kong.
I'm not opening any more restaurants, if that's
Oh,
the
good.
question. Ever again. Never. Ever. I can assure you. Absolutely not. Doesn't matter who asks, what you say, no. How much money you offer me? No.
I don't blame you. And how do we get to see this movie again? Anybody up there know?
It's hopefully on Cathay Pacific soon.
Wow.
They have been talking about it. Yeah, so hopefully it will end up on Cathay Pacific. I think it's not March, so maybe April or May. But it's with distributors, so hopefully it gets around. I mean, the really awful thing about it is that I say it's awful, but they've submitted it. You know, the people who made it have submitted it to tons and tons and tons and tons of festivals, and not one in Australia has accepted. Even the Melbourne Film Festival, which, for God's sake, I'm from Melbourne. So it was accepted last year. The first place it was shown was actually in a film festival in New York, in Harlem, run by black women, called Imagine This Women's International Film Festival, which is sort of remarkable that it took black women in Harlem to pick a Chinese woman's documentary about a white woman in China. That was, yeah, I'm dying to tell that story on an Australian stage. Dying to. On a Melbourne stage, particularly.
I will check it out on Cathay every
Well,
time
I
I
think,
fly.
yeah,
Yes.
I don't know. We've asked and they haven't committed, but they have said that they will put it on their documentary channel.
Yay,
Angela's
Angela.
got a big voice. She can yell.
Thank you. It was a lovely film. I noticed that I didn't feature in any of it.
I'm very
and I was
sorry,
at some of
Angela,
those
you weren't
things.
there.
I was. There was some
If you were
things.
not there
Well,
at the time,
suppose,
we
yeah.
could
Anyway.
cut you in.
At least my logo was there. I remember you telling me a couple of years ago that someone had written a PhD about your experience in China. What happened to that? And did that feed at all into the documentary?
No, it's done. He got his PhD. He is a young Australian academic. Well, he's not academic really. He's now working for Trip.com, and he approached me wanting to write about his thesis was civilian pioneer engagement since the fall of the Qing dynasty up to the current time between Australia and China. Wow. And so it starts with George Morrison, and he had done his MA on George Morrison. He's done his master's. And then he came and said, I want to do a PhD, and can I do a PhD on you? I was like, are you serious? Anyway, he did it, and it's done, and he got it at Kanazawa University. So it's another weird thing in the world. I know. Yeah, there you go. Kanazawa University, PhD. Yeah. He's got it. Yeah, it's out. You can read it if you want.
Stuck to his thesis topic that he told you?
He did. I mean, basically, his argument is really that it's civilian engagement that really changes things, and it's not government, it's not really government-led, which we'd probably find a bit hard to believe at the moment with the collapse of things being led by governments around the world. But
Any one final question from the floor?
no,
If
good.
not, okay. So as part of sort of like, watching it again, if you were detached, if you were not Michelle Garnaut, if you were not, that's a really tough
And
one.
hard to do.
Okay. And if you were not Michelle Garnaut, and if you were watching this M on the Bund documentary, and with this, central person, Michelle, how would you describe yourself in 3 words?
Authentic would be the nicest one, I think. Determined. I don't know. Thank you, Angela. Because it's very hard not to say bossy, and then of course you get women are bossy and men are forthright,
Yes.
and you get that bullshit. Yeah. So yeah.
Well, it's like, a really rare moment that, if you could see my vintage point to it, that you actually get Michelle thinking. So I've actually asked a
don't
few
do
of your good friends to describe you in 3 words. You ready? Okay. All right. So,
Like this is your life.
fun, determined, and if you not, and if you agree, okay, passionate, forthright, intelligent,
It's nice.
energetic, wise, pragmatic, larger than life. However, all of the ones that I've asked, they have one common adjective to describe you, and that's not bossy. Okay? That common adjective is actually dynamic.
Okay, that's nice. Thank you.
Yes. One common adjective to actually describe Michelle Garnaut. And I think for me, that will be also the adjective that I would like to describe you. You're definitely larger than life. And I thank you for sharing your life and your passion with us. We have all experienced and we have all traveled with leaders in our life who bring out the best in us, who challenge us by just being themselves, who challenge us by the journey they travel in a very dynamic, pragmatic, and maybe very bossy way. So thank you, Michelle.
I want to say, quote Oscar Wilde, you have to be yourself because everybody else is taken.
There you go, Michelle. Thank you so much.
True.